everyone. I'm Mary Beth McAndrews. I am so excited to be here today with some of the crew behind the Dark Horse comic series Dead Mall. I have writer Adam Cesare with me. I have illustrator David Stoll, and then I have the cover designer Trevor Henderson. Hello, everybody. How are
Hello.
you?
Good.
Great.
Yeah.
Normal.
Ready for the yeah, normal.
Yeah.
So, I guess to start off, Adam, I'd love to hear from you where Dead Mall came from for you in your brain.
Um, that's a good question. I was looking to pitch comics because I've done some licensed comic work in the past. I've done an arc of Dark Crystal and Power Rangers like backup comics and Adventure Time, but I'd never done anything that was horror, and all my books are horror, and it felt weird to be like, I really want to do a horror book, horror comic, because I absolutely love the medium. And it really just came out of the like, what is an incredibly visual thing, and what's a thing that you can't, that wouldn't work so well as a novel, like that feels inherently like it would be served by the comic book medium. Because I think a lot of, a lot of the not good comics I read, because I'm a huge comic reader, feel like pitches for Netflix shows, and I'm like,
Mm.
well, like, I don't want to, or
Oh,
like movies, or like, this is a spec script that I dusted off and I tried to like,
yeah,
which I think the comics community is very suspect of stuff like that, and I think it's
Yeah.
very like that your actual comics reader is just like knows that kind of stuff a mile away. So I was just like,
yeah,
well, what is a story that would be served by this medium, not like has to could be compromised by this medium? And it was like,
yeah,
well, if you so that was one half of it, and then the other half of it was I just love malls, and David and I have talked about this ad nauseum, and he's we've um, so I just and I'm like, mall horror is not like, you think of mall horror movies, you think of Dawn of the Dead, you think of Chopping Mall, and then you like immediately you start defaulting to like things that are only tertiarily mall horror. You like, it's like, oh yeah, there's like a couple scenes
Yeah.
in Night of the Comet that like fit, and that, like,
yeah,
so things like that. Like, and I'm like, why isn't that like a almost a subgenre in and of itself? Even though it's just small. So I just wanted to do something that explored malls, and I think malls are in a really interesting time in America, and malls represent America in an interesting way. And I think the kind of like button, very reductionist view you get of malls now is that dead mall. It's like, oh, malls are over. Malls are, but it's not 100% true. Like, malls are just in a different space and are becoming something different, where they used to be this kind of for decades they were this surrogate town square when the town
yeah,
square was gone.
Yeah.
And what does that do to a place? And I'd written a lot of books recently that were all like um, based in reality, or kind of could happen, non-supernatural, non-speculative. And I just wanted to be like, do the most supernatural, most speculative thing I could do to gotta get away from that. And that's, so all those factors became Dead Mall. And then linking up with David, and discussing our similar interests, and in our childhood, basically, and how we grew up going to malls, because
mhm,
it's not really a nostalgia comic, it's not really a nostalgia piece, but it's like kind of about that. It's about like how everyone has their own nostalgia, their own specific mall period that they're familiar with, and their
oh yeah,
own place, and how it's all kind of the same across the country, but it's all kind of also hyper regional and hyper specific. So those are some of the discussions we have, and not to make it sound like too high handed. It's monsters in a mall terrorizing teens. Like, that's what it is, but it's got all these things that we were thinking about when we were making it.
yeah.
And it's 4 issues. They're 28 page, so a little bit bigger than your typical floppy, and they tell a complete story that we're really, really happy about to have wrapped up in a trade paperback with the illustrious Trevor Henderson doing a cover. So
Well, and I love malls because I feel like malls are the ultimate liminal space, and that liminal space horror is like so hot right now.
Mhm.
But like I think what, and especially like empty malls and like the weird, back hallways of malls and what goes on inside of the mall. And I really liked how you tapped into that, but instead of it just being liminal, it's like fleshy and gross, which I love though. And I think it taps into that interest in about liminal horror. Cause Trevor, I know that you are also a big liminal horror person just from
Yeah.
seeing you online. So like, did that kind of pique your interest in coming onto this project as well, Trevor?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think even before I knew about it, Adam was like messaging me whenever I mentioned something about mall, because I go on about mall horror and how ripe it is and was, and just kind of like Adam was saying, there's like 3 actual movies. Some of them, oh, you get there's Chopping Mall, there's Dawn of the Dead, there's like Phantom of the Mall, I guess, Eric's Revenge, and that's kind of it. So I was like, oh, why is there more mall horror? And Adam was like, dude, just wait. I can't talk about anything yet, but like eventually we'll have a conversation about this. But yeah, I'm a big fan of those empty spaces, that kind of like hauntology of like like the emotions that empty spaces like that can bring up, for like it's mixed up with nostalgia and also like this really eerie, it's hard to explain, but like this whole
Yeah.
feeling for spaces you might not have even ever visited, tied up with like dying architecture and dying businesses. It's funny that dead mall is kind of the term for the dying malls like this, because where I'm from, it doesn't die, it turns into a dirt mall. There are dirt malls and then they're just gone. But yeah, I love
like that.
Yeah, I love malls. I love spooky architecture stuff, and I love monsters. So this was a great project.
Oh my God. Well, and so David, you also, I mean, you created the space with your illustrations, but you also created these monsters that populate that space. And I think there's a really interesting tension here again, like the empty, scary, weird space of the mall, and then like these horrific, like Evil Dead, but even scarier, also Hellraiser, Cenobite like monsters. Like there's like a blender of those monsters, and I love that. So I wanted to hear more from you about monster design and monster inspiration for all of the creatures we see in Dead Mall.
Yeah, well, it's funny that you say that, because while we were designing monsters, we kept running into walls where we were like, okay, we don't want this to be just a Cenobite, or we don't want this to be just like a zombie. Like we were trying very hard to stay away from all of the horror tropes that we've already seen in media and things like that, while also diving into each mall walker that you see in the book is a creation that stems from that individual character's like deepest desires and wants, right? So there are monsters in the book, like the very first monster that you see in issue 1, has this backstory and these deep desires and drives that Adam and I have talked about, but that don't actually show up in the story whatsoever. So each one has their own kind of design style. And I feel like I was more or less successful with staying away from traditional horror tropes, some more and some less. But in general, each monster is their own kind of unique design based on kind of what we decided their character attributes were. And so there's this kind of like there's this wealth of backstory in each design that doesn't necessarily crop up in the story itself, but is kind of, we tried to have that reflect a deeper story in this story that we only had 4 issues to work in, right? So we tried to have the monster designs themselves reflect more horror beyond what you can actually see. So things like one of the first monsters that we come in contact with is the hairdresser. None of them have names, right?
Yeah, they don't. It's what's great is like we call them mall walkers. Like we have this like this whole mythology that only lives between David and ourselves and the editors. Like they all have names, but they don't have names in it. Like it's kind of it's a great. I want David to keep talking about the hairdresser, but that's it. I just wanted to point out that like we have like layers and layers of like the iceberg is what you see in the comic, and which is a great stand-in for comics writing as a whole. It's all about fitting things literally in boxes, and that and I'm sure as an illustrator you feel that, and it's like what is the best angle and the best presentation of this idea that you can communicate it effectively to a reader. And something like the hairdresser, when you first see her.
Yeah, well, and yeah, the that iceberg analogy is really good because there are so many design elements that we put into the book that I really wish that we had the time to kind of like get into all the nitty gritty things. But little things like the hairdresser, I gave the hairdresser 4 arms. There's no reason why the hairdresser in the story has 4 arms other than her character. When we were talking about her, I really got the idea that she her main compulsion was just she wanted to cut, right? She needed to cut, and she only had 2 hands to do that with. And so when the mall like transformed her, they gave her more arms to cut with, which was maddening because she can't really do anything other than cut. And in that perspective, I also gave her this huge mane of hair that made her look like a wild animal kind of thing, which is ironic because she wants to keep cutting and cutting, and she keeps she's got scars all over her body, so it's evident that she keeps cutting into herself, but she hasn't cut her hair, which is just this kind of like play of like we want each monster to look like the mall has given them kind of what they've like deeply desired, but in a monkey's paw kind of situation where it was like they have the mall has lured them in and trapped them with what they desired, but they are never going to find solace in what they found, right? So each and every one of our monster designs has that kind of that kind of pathos where it was like you can see how what this person was kind of desiring and longing for when the mall drew them in, and you can also see their kind of like eternal torment in their monster design.
Yeah. Well, I also love how you don't like, especially this part where she's chasing after our jock man and she snips and you have it cutting to the ribbon cutting.
My favorite
and
part in this one, yeah.
I literally, and then it didn't, at first I was like, it was almost like I rewound. I was like, wait, did she actually cut his finger off? And then and you do this a couple times with cutting in these like vintage advertisements as like filling in the violence. And I think that's so cool. And you also do this with revealing like the woman with the hairspray in her face half rotting, and then like the beautiful ad. Like, how did you, specifically you and Adam, work together maybe to create these moments? Like, how did that communication work in especially making these more visual kind of fill in the gaps moments that don't necessarily have like dialogue ascribed to it, but obviously it's a collaboration between the two of you?
Yeah, so a lot of the ideas behind those are in the script. Adam came up with that before I even got on the project. So the script would say, would for like our hairdresser would say like we were showing our hairdresser with like half of her body, melted, and then you cut to an ad with a 50s style, woman with perfume. And so for each of those ads, I kind of had the central idea of what we were trying to get at, and then I didn't really ever shy away from the prompt that Adam had in there, but then it was up to me to kind of like make that tie into the visuals that we were doing. So it was kind of just like a 1-2 step.
Cool.
Yeah, and I think I love that, and we do less of it in the middle, and then it kind of comes back in issue 4. And it was in my mind, it was like, how can I get like, and I didn't want to drive David crazy, because I was also like drawing a bunch of different styles, because they're not like we didn't want them to look like the rest of the book. We didn't want them to look. We wanted them to look like print ads from that vintage, and then of multiple vintages, because like the first line in the book is about how this place has been open since the 60s. So we have like all these different decades to play with, and I just wanted the location or the setting as a character is such a cliche. Like, people are like, oh, New York's really a character in Scorsese's filmography. But we did, like, I was like, no, we want to literalize that. Like, the mall is telling the story quite, like, he is the narrator. And we wanted to be able to see these snippets of history even before we get to any of the, spoiler, there's a little bit of time travel in the book, but like before we even got to time traveling, I was like, the word mall is in the title. I want people to feel like they're visiting the mall and get those mall feelings. And how do you do that? And it's that the ads just kind of became that way of doing it. And then you had the fun juxtapositions where I don't think David's giving himself enough credit. And they like, yeah, I wrote them, but I was like, I don't know, this is gonna fucking work. Like, I was just like, good luck. I was like, good luck, artists. Like, which I'm sorry, David, but you did a You did a wonderful
did great.
job.
It's my favorite parts of the whole book, honestly. I think they're so effective and iconic in a way. They work really
Thank
well.
you. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that, and I brought that into the covers as well. So it
Yeah.
covers the covers for each of the individual issues. Each cover has ads placed around the main image as well. And I tried to have those ads tie into what was being shown in the main image. You had like hunting and sports ads for one, and makeup ads for another, and things like that.
Right.
And yeah, those were dangerous pit traps, because I would draw like the important part, the comic book part, and then be like, okay, and then there's an ad here, and I'll get to that when I get to the coloring stage. And then I'd get to colors, and I'd be like, oh god, now I gotta draw an ad. which is not Adam's fault at all. That was my brain being like, yeah, an ad. I'll get to it later. And then there was a lot of work that got put into the ads.
My favorite is when you do that, when you're like, I can do that later. It'll be easy. And then you're
Yeah,
like, I was sorely mistaken about the effort.
Problem for future me.
This is future Dave's problem. Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Well then, Trevor, I would love to hear from you about how you took the work of Adam and David and designed your cover for the collection of all of the issues.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty good segue, because the one of the elements of the whole book that stood out to me the most was that kind of torn paper effect with the ads. So even the initial sketches played with that, where we were going in a slightly different direction, where it was like the image had been torn, revealing something underneath. It was supposed to be like the facade of this mall is being torn away to reveal all the past layers of time where it's existed, and also like obviously the horrible, meaty, like wretched underside that is the living mall. So the one image we settled on with the kind of the crowd of mannequins, but just this big long rip of teeth across it, kind of felt fitting about something predatory and hungry hiding underneath like this veneer of the plastic shell of the mall, I guess. But I thought it'd be a good image, and mannequins are scary, and I like drawing teeth.
And if we really want to get deep, it's really the consumption capitalism of malls. We can
you can peel that onion as far as you want. Yeah.
I went to university for this. I could talk about that. I could bullshit for hours about that.
Exactly. Same. I'm in master's. I'm like, let's assign a lot, like very deep meaning of the teeth.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
I like it.
I also want to say I'm so excited, Trevor, to see that cover in person, because we're gonna get some spot gloss on that.
Yeah, we're getting spot gloss on those teeth, so we are so pumped.
Oh, amazing! That makes me so happy. I'm just really happy you guys are happy, and that I could hopefully put like a good image on top of all your hard work.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I have a question that is not related to Dead Mall, but more about the creative process for all of you. And it is something that I just wonder about all the time. And is, what do you listen to, if you listen to anything, while you're working? And Adam, I want to start with you. What do you listen to, or what have you been listening to, if you listen to anything while you write?
So funny, because sometimes that's a really good question. And sometimes I'll make playlists for myself, and I'll like name them after like the different books, and like and then I will deviate. I'll find myself deviating from that, because it's either has to be stuff I've listened to a lot if it has lyrics, or stuff that has no lyrics. So it's a lot of film scores, and which I'm sure is the same for a lot of writers. But I'll also I'm working on something right now, and I've just been listening to the same album over and over again, and it's a little short thing. It's like a 40-page comic, so I know that I'm like, you know what, it's been working with me so far. So it's almost like a superstition at this point, where I'm just listening to Red Fang's album Arrows. I've been just listening to it over and over again. It's not even that long an album, it's like 40 minutes. So I'm like, man, I'm almost getting bored of this, but I can't stop now because I'm almost done with the script. So I got to just keep listening. So that's another level of obsessiveness.
Trevor, what about you?
Usually I'll like, when I'm drawing is one of the few times when I have time to watch movies. So usually I watch movies on my computer and work on my iPad in front of it more than music or TV or something that I'm not super paying attention to. Yeah. I think like it was split between listening to an album by the Paper Chase called We Know Where You Sleep. I think that's the album title. And also like watching like White Lotus or something. So
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then David, what about you?
It depends on what part of the process I'm in, right? So if I'm doing something that is kind of storytelling heavy, like thumbnails or pencils, where I really need to be kind of focusing on what's going on the page, then anything that doesn't have lyrics or something that I don't need to be paying attention to
Cool.
is usually there. But usually, actually, I'll just be in silence. Like I won't listen to anything if
Interesting.
I'm doing pencils.
Yeah.
But if it's something that's more mechanically, just more mechanically repetitive, like inks, or as long as I have my color palettes done, coloring. Um, then if I have something on in the background again that I don't have to pay attention to, but that does fuel the kind of storytelling parts in my brain. I'll listen to podcasts. I went through the Magnus archives again as a
Oh,
podcast.
I need to listen
Um,
to that. I need
it,
to listen
it
to it.
it's phenomenal, and once you listen to it through, but like once before, and you kind of know what's going on, it's really good to just kind of like let your mind zone out too. I also have been listening to a lot of like audiobooks, Margaret Atwood and Stephen King in the background.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And then specifically for issue 4, I've been working from home. Just the holidays and stuff made it easier to work from home, and so we'll put on some. I'm gesturing off camera to the TV that I have like right over there. So we'll put on some sitcom or procedural or something that we've watched before. I think that I've watched through. We watched through the whole Conjuring movie series.
Oh,
So,
nice.
so the first 3 Conjuring movies and the Annabelle movies and the Nun, and I think La Llorona.
The
So
extended
like,
universe.
yeah, all of the Conjuring extended universe. Yeah, so we
Yeah.
watched through all those, and then like The Office and Parks and Rec and things like that. Something that we've watched before and is familiar.
Yeah.
Is kind of the point. So
Hell yeah. That's incredible. Well, Adam, David, Trevor, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me about Dead Mall, and everyone
Yeah.
keep an eye out for Dead Mall, both the individual issues and the collection coming soon to comic book
yeah,
movie,
thank you
comic
so
book
much for
shop
this.
near
Yeah,
you.
please pick them up. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think at the end of this, because we're doing the cover reveal at the same time, so it's going to be on. It's on everywhere you buy books. You buy it locally. You can ask your local comic shop to get it. It's in June. It'll come out, or you can just pre-order it online, and it'll get delivered to you. You won't even remember you bought it, and then it'll come
Yeah.
to you. But you'll
And
love
that's
it.
a
It's like a
great-
gift.
You're gonna
It's like a
love it.
surprise gift for
Exactly.
yourself.
Buy yourself a
Exactly.
surprise gift for June 20th right now. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.